In the near future, DARPA may possess the technology to remotely control the human mind. But as concerning as that may be, according to some scientists, a more permanent kind of mind control technology is looming, and it involves modifying the human brain by altering the human body's DNA. Altering the human body's DNA.
Hey YouTube, this is Freedom Voice again. I wanted to go over another patent. I've had this patent for some time. It's patent number 6011991. And you'll notice there it's dated January 4th, 2000. And if you look at the title of this patent, it's entitled Communication System and Method, including brainwave analysis and or use of brain activity. And it just kind of reiterates the fact that all of us are monitored. Our brainwave activities are monitored. Looking at the abstract here, it says that it is a system and method for enabling human beings to communicate by way of their monitored brain activity. And you'll notice that it's assuming that everybody's sort of monitored. And this is a way or a system of communicating. Goes on to say the brainwave the brain activity of an individual is monitored and transmitted to a remote location by way of satellite. And emphasizing their remote location. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But it goes on to say at the remote location, the monitored brain activity is compared with pre-recorded normalized brain activity curves, waveforms, or patterns to determine if a match or substantial match is found. If such a match is found, then the computer at the remote location determines that the individual was attempting to communicate the word, phrase, or thought corresponding to the match stored normalized signal. Now, again, this patent is very alarming, and I'm going to kind of go over the figures. There are quite a few figures in here that show that they can in fact read thoughts, but it's basically through EEG signals. If you look at the further details of this patent, it says that this system relates to, or this invention rather, relates to a system and method for enabling human beings to communicate with one another by normal brain activity. Okay. In particular, this invention relates to such a system and method where brain activities of a particular individual is monitored and transmitted in a wireless manner via satellite from the location of the individual to a remote location so that the brain activity can be computer analyzed at the remote location, thereby enabling the computer it's not only it's basically saying that the computer is able to analyze the brainwave activity at a remote location to determine what the monitored individual was thinking or wishing to communicate. And emphasizing this point here, it's showing that they do have this system and they have a method of determining your thought process or what you were trying to communicate. Reading on, it says, in certain embodiments, this invention relates to the analysis of brain waves or brain activity and or to remote firing of select brain nodes in order to produce a predetermined effect on an individual. That's startling. That's really, really startling. And those of us that are targeted individuals, those of us that understand remote neural monitoring, we find this to be very interesting that they have a patent that actually says what we've been saying all along. Now, this portion right here, basically goes over prior inventions. These inventions or patents were produced back in the 90s, and it's patent number 5816247, patent number 5325862. And these patents basically talk about hardware and electrodes that must be in place in order to monitor brainwave EEG. But those patents were superseded by this particular patent, which says that they can do it wirelessly. And that's what I want to emphasize. Looking at the summary of the invention, it says, generally speaking, this invention fulfills the above described needs in the art by providing a method of communicating comprising the steps of, and there are quite a few steps here that have to be in place, but the first one being a first human being at a first location. Step number 2 would be providing a computer at the second location, that is remote from the first location. So it's clearly saying that you can have a person in one location, a computer in another location remotely, and a satellite, and providing at least one sensor or many more sensors in place to monitor the firing of one or more brain nodes or synapse type members on the first human being. It goes on to say, detecting brain activity of the first human being using at least one sensor and transmitting the detected brain activity to the satellite as a signal, including brain activity information. So not only the EEG, but they're able to find or transmit brain information, activity information to a satellite. It says the satellite sending a signal, including the brain activity information to the second location, and then a receiver at the second location receiving the signal from the satellite and forwarding the brain activity of the information in the signal to the computer. Now, my question would be, what purpose does this patent serve? I mean, this just seems like a violation of human rights all the way around. Reading on, it says, comparing the received brain activity information of the first human being with normalized or average brain activity information relating to the first human being from memory, and determining whether the first human being was attempting to communicate particular words, phrases, or thoughts based upon comparing of received brain activity information to the information from memory. So you can see from this patent, it seems to suggest that there is a remote computer somewhere that has sort of a pattern of words and thoughts, and it sort of compares the uplinked monitored brain waves, EEG, to the stored information. Looking down here at the patent, I mean, it goes over more details here, and I kind of want to cut this short, but I do want to move down to how they transmit this information. It says, it is an object of this invention to enable brain activity of a first human being to be monitored with the activity being transmitted to a remote location so that individuals and or a computer at the remote location can determine what the first human being was thinking or intending to communicate. In such a manner, human beings can communicate with one another via monitoring of brain activity and transmission of the same. Now, the method by which they transfer information or communicate information, it says, it is another object of this invention to communicate monitored brain activity from one location to another in a wireless manner, such as by IR, RF, or satellite. So they can do it 3 ways: through IR, RF, which is basically radio frequencies, or satellite. And you know, we as targeted individuals, we often talk about hive mind. We often talk about remote neuromonitoring, and this patent seems to bring it all together. It goes on to say here, it is another object of the invention to provide a system capable of identifying particular nodes in an individual's brain, the firing of which affects characteristics such as appetite, hunger, thirst, communication skills, that is, the nodes are utilized to communicate certain words such as yes, no, or phrases such as I don't know, I'm not sure, members such as 1, 2, 10, 100, and the like. Thought processes, depression, and the like. So there's a lot involved in this patent here. Moving on, it goes on to talk about how these particular systems in place are the result of embodiments or devices mounted to the person under the scalp, and they can be energized in a predetermined manner or sequence to remotely cause particular identifying brain nodes to be fired in order to cause a predetermined feeling or reaction in an individual, such as lack of hunger, lack or depression, lack of thirst, I'm sure that should be of thirst, lack of aggression, lack of Alzheimer's disease effects, or the like. Brain node firings are the bases of thought and mind processes of individuals. Certain embodiments of this invention enable such brain firings and behaviors to be captured by an external device. It is an object of this invention to utilize a normalization or normalizing curve or a waveform pattern based upon monitored brain activity to detect or determine thought processes by the monitored individual. In such a manner, individuals can transmit by satellite what they are thinking or intending to think via their monitored brain activity without the need to talk or to write down information. Now, again, friends, I mean, this is very, very startling. I've done videos on this before. I've talked about this information before. I've done videos on remote neuromonitoring. This takes it to a whole new level. Okay, at this time, I want to sort of insert a clip here by Dr. Justin Sanchez at the DARPA Institute. He talks about how they were responsible for developing a new brain interface that basically allows the human brain, to connect to the internet. And this is a new technology, but it kind of shows where we're headed as a society. And I really, really question why DARPA is getting involved in this type of technology and what is the purpose. Obviously, they claim that it is for medical research, is for medical advancement. But again, I question why DARPA is getting involved in this type of technology.
So, what is DARPA? DARPA is the high-tech research branch of the Pentagon. And I'm currently the office director in the Biological Technologies Office. And while I'm at DARPA, we're thinking very deeply about national security. But what I'm going to show you today is that a lot of the technologies that we're developing go well beyond national security and actually are going to challenge us as humans. And what we've done at DARPA is develop the technology in order to sense these signals in real time or even write signals into the brain. And today I'm going to show you a few examples of what that technology is and how it actually came to be. This may be your first time hearing about a direct neural interface. And in the middle of the screen up there is actually an example of one of the types of neural interfaces that we're using in humans today. So this is a sensor array. It's about 4 by 4 millimeters. And on this sensor array, there are 96 sensors. Each one of the tips on that little array can detect between 1 and 3 neurons in your brain. All right? And we have the technology in order to identify those neurons, amplify their activity. There's minuscule signals actually happening in your brain. We can send those signals into a computer, and that computer can interpret what all of those signals actually mean when you're thinking about trying to do something. And we can place these sensors anywhere in your brain or even in your peripheral nervous system, right? These are the nerves that are outside of your brain. Okay? So while you may have thought of neurotechnology, as I've just described to you, as being something way off in the future, It's actually a technology that exists today, and we're actually using it with humans.
In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day.
There are explicit programs of DARPA to read and write to human brains, whether it's through direct implants within the brain or wearing some kind of cap. So these things are being worked on, and we know that.
So what's the next step? Maybe the next step is we can send instructions and information to an actual person from a distance with this kind of technology to let another person control their actions. But that could be something that could be malicious.
We still don't have a good handle on the ethics of various technologies that we use. The technologists tend not to be so concerned with the ethics. That seems to be the domain of other people, policymakers, for example, academics, people like this. There needs to be a hand-in-hand interaction with people creating technology and those who are considering the ethics of that technology.
You notice DARPA representative said that they still don't have a handle on the various technologies that are being used and the ethics. That's just like saying that we don't have a handle on the various fighter jets that we use. I mean, that's just ludicrous. Here in the patent here, you can see the various ways that this particular technology can be used remotely. It involves a transmitter. It involves, first of all, first-person subject, number 5, then a transmitter, then a satellite. You can see number 15, as well as a first location computer system that involves a demodulator, a parallel to Siri converter, a decoder, descrambler, so on and so forth. And they're able to uplink various EEGs, brain EEGs, patterns, and to read them out. And I want to kind of show you how that works here in figure 2. You can see here the display, the processor, and the RAM, the storage of many individual responses, and then the comparators. You can see here, for example, 3AE, or figure 3A is Joe saying no. This is the corresponding EEG effect on the computer that's read out remotely, and it is passed through the satellite. You can see when he says yes. And so as you continue to get that pattern from various people, you begin to understand that pattern to mean yes and no, and it's very easy to be able to read someone's mind, at least read what they're thinking. And there are other patterns such as figure 3C, 3D, 3E, and 3F. So at a later time, I want to continue on this subject and look at some other patents that are related to this patent and to show how this technology is being used. It's being used, in my belief and my understanding, against people like individuals in the TI community as well as many others. It can be used for good, but I think it needs to be investigated because I believe it's being used nefarious as well. And that is the purpose of this video, to show that there are technologies out there that have potentially gotten into the hands of individuals who are using it for nefarious purposes.